There is a world in our solar system that has been hiding in plain sight for billions of years. It is scorched by temperatures hot enough to melt lead, battered by more craters than the moon, and it shrinks a little more every single year. And somehow, despite being one of our nearest planetary neighbors, we know almost nothing about it. That world is Mercury. And in November 2026, everything is about to change. Welcome back. Today we are talking about the most overlooked planet in our solar system, the tiny, battered, sun-scorched world at the very heart of our cosmic neighborhood. Mercury has always been the planet that gets skipped in the conversation. We talk about Mars colonies, Jupiter's great storms, Saturn's dazzling rings. But Mercury? It sits there in the darkness just beyond the sun's glare, largely ignored. That is about to end, because a spacecraft called BepiColombo, launched back in 2018 by the European Space Agency and JAXA, Japan's space agency, has been on a 7-year journey through the inner solar system, and it is finally closing in. Arrival, November 2026. And what it is going to reveal might completely rewrite what we thought we knew about how rocky planets form. So let's start with why Mercury is so strange in the first place. If you were to look at Mercury from a distance, your first instinct might be to think you are looking at the moon. The surface is gray, ancient, and cratered beyond imagination. But that comparison falls apart almost immediately when you start digging into the details. Mercury is the smallest planet in our solar system, only about 40% larger than our moon, and yet it has a magnetic field. Not a strong one, but one that exists, and that is deeply puzzling, because for a planet to generate a magnetic field, it typically needs a large, churning molten metal core, which means Mercury, this tiny little world, has a core that takes up roughly 85% of its entire radius. Think about that for a moment. If Earth were Mercury, its core would stretch almost all the way to the surface. The planet is basically a giant iron ball with a thin, rocky shell. Why? Nobody fully knows. That is one of the central mysteries BepiColombo is going to help us solve. Now, Mercury is not just strange on the inside. Its surface is one of the most extreme environments in the entire solar system. During the day, temperatures can soar to 430 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt tin and lead. But here is the twist. Mercury has almost no atmosphere to speak of, just a whisper-thin exosphere of atoms being blasted off the surface by the solar wind. And without an atmosphere to hold in heat, the night side of Mercury plunges to negative 180 degrees Celsius. That is a temperature swing of over 600 degrees between day and night on the same planet. It is a world of brutal extremes, swinging between furnace and freezer with every rotation. And somehow, tucked into permanently shadowed craters near the poles, scientists believe there may be water ice. Water ice on the planet closest to the sun. The universe, as always, refuses to be simple. Here is where BepiColombo enters the story, and why this mission is genuinely exciting. Map of this mysterious world before intentionally crashing into its surface in 2015. Messenger was revolutionary, but it had limitations. It could only operate for a relatively short time before the intense solar radiation began to degrade its systems, and its orbit was not designed to study the planet's south pole with much detail. BepiColombo is different. It is not one spacecraft, it is two. The European Mercury Planetary Orbiter and the Japanese Mercury Magnetospheric Orbiter will separate upon arrival and study the planet simultaneously from different orbital positions. Two scientific eyes on Mercury at once for the first time in history. It carries 16 scientific instruments between the two orbiters, designed to study everything from Mercury's surface geology and internal structure to its magnetic field, its thin exosphere, and the way the solar wind interacts with the planet. This is the most ambitious Mercury mission ever attempted. Now here is the moment I want you to really sit with. Here is the perspective shift. We tend to think of Mercury as a dead, boring rock, a relic from the earliest days of the solar system, unchanged and unimportant. But what Mercury actually is a time capsule. It is the oldest, most pristine record we have of what the inner solar system looked like 4.5 billion years ago. When the planets were still forming, when rock and metal were colliding and coalescing in a furnace of creation, Mercury was there. And because it has almost no atmosphere to erode its surface, no weather to wash away the evidence, no tectonic plates to recycle its crust, everything that has ever happened to Mercury is still written on its surface. Every impact, every volcanic eruption, every shift and contraction of its cooling core, it is all preserved. BepiColombo is not just visiting a dead planet, It is reading the oldest book in our solar system, and the story written on Mercury's surface might tell us how Earth itself came to be. The journey to get BepiColombo to Mercury has itself been an extraordinary feat of engineering. You might think flying closer to the Sun would be easy, just aim inward and fire your engines, but it is actually one of the hardest things in spaceflight.
Objects in the inner solar system move incredibly fast, and to slow down enough to be captured by Mercury's gravity, BepiColombo has had to perform a series of 9 planetary flybys, 1 of Earth, 2 of Venus, and 6 of Mercury itself, essentially using the gravity of each planet as a brake to bleed off speed. It has been a slow, spiraling 7-year dance through the inner solar system. And all of that patience, all of that precision, will finally pay off in November 2026, when BepiColombo settles into orbit around Mercury and begins its primary science mission. It will spend at least 1 Mercury year, which is just 88 Earth days, mapping, measuring, and listening to this ancient world. Scientists hope to finally answer why Mercury's core is so enormous, whether that ice at the poles is really water and how it got there, how Mercury's faint magnetic field is generated and why it is offset from the planet's center, and what the volcanic history of Mercury tells us about the building blocks that eventually became the rocky planets, including our own. Mercury has waited billions of years in the shadow of the Sun, overlooked and underestimated. In November 2026, it finally steps into the spotlight. And if history has taught us anything about space exploration, it is this. Every time we visit a world up close for the first time, the universe surprises us, every single time. Mercury, I suspect, is going to be no different. If this video got you excited about what BepiColombo is going to uncover, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this channel and join our community of space explorers. Subscribe so you do not miss our full coverage when BepiColombo enters Mercury orbit in 2026. We will be covering it live, with breakdowns, discoveries, and everything the science teams reveal. And drop a comment below. I want to know, what do you think BepiColombo is going to find that surprises us the most? In the meantime, our next video is going to take you somewhere even more extreme, deep into the heart of a neutron star, where a teaspoon of matter weighs 1 billion tons. You do not want